Hello and welcome to the Melanated Veteran Podcast. I'm your host, Miss Mesha, and before we begin, the first order of business is to share, like, and subscribe to the Melanated Veteran. We're on almost all major platforms: iTunes, Google Play, iHeart, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and many more. Don't forget to check us out on our website at www.themelanatedveteran.com. So today, my guest is a licensed master social worker, a MUD certified makeup artist, owner of Covert Beauty LLC, and host of It's Time to Unconvert podcast. Please welcome the First Lady, Sabella Reyes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was quite the introduction.
Yes, of course. A woman of everything that you do for the community and everything. Yes, you deserve a big introduction.
Thank you so much.
So okay. So to begin, what branch were you in, and how long were you in?
So I served in the U.S. Navy, and I was in the Navy for 11 years.
Okay. Wow. So what made you decide to join the Navy?
Well, I joined the Navy for a couple reasons, but primarily I was fleeing sexual abuse from home, and I needed a job that would, provide financial security and stability with little to no job experience. So I actually sat down with the recruiter from every branch, and the reason why I picked the Navy over everywhere was because I had learned really quickly that if the Navy says you're going to be stationed somewhere for a few years, that doesn't mean you're stuck there.
Right.
You still get to travel and deploy and stuff like that. So that seemed like a little bit more of what I was looking for, and what my military career would be. So that's why I went Navy.
Okay. Yeah, the Navy to me was awesome. Like, just dealing in part with the fact that they're wanting to make sure that they get people to come in, and you do get to travel. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite parts, actually.
Right.
Of being in the Navy was the traveling.
Right. Okay. So, what was your first thought? Like, when you decide you got to boot camp, what was your first reaction?
Honestly, I grew up in a very strict household. I'm the oldest of 5.
Oh.
And so I've always been I've always been, in a leadership role. So I mean, to be completely honest, when I was in boot camp, one of my first thoughts were, I realized very quickly how much my life had already prepared me for the opportunity. A lot of the things that people had been complaining about, or that were, a little difficult for people to get through, especially being yelled at and stuff like that. Like, unfortunately, I had already been conditioned for a lot of the stuff that we had to go through in boot camp. So it was more so of like, oh wow, like I've been doing this forever, so it's nothing new,
Right.
Especially when it came to making those racks.
Hello.
You remember the locker bunker? What is it? The bunker drills, the lock and bunker drills, whatever they were called, and then make you strip your rack and all of that stuff. Like, that was my mom. Like, if your bed was not made the way it was supposed to be, you would come home and your stuff would be all over the floor.
Right. I feel the same way. Like, it to me, it was just like, okay, shut up and do what you're told. Like, that was something I didn't have really a problem with. It was like, okay, I want to make sure I get through this. Okay, we're gonna do what I got to get told. Some people, it's like, come on, man, come on. Like, do you not understand?
It was really hard for some people, and I'm like, dude, like, just shut up, like, because I'm gonna have to do push-ups too.
Right. We trying to help each other out. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious. So you get through boot camp, you get stations. What were some highs and lows, some that you had while you were in?
Well, I actually appreciate this question because I feel like with my company, Covert Beauty, the low, is already, highlighted. Like I talk about my experience in, being sexually assaulted by a service member that I entrusted, and he betrayed my trust, and the process, and, what it looked like, and how I was re-victimized with having to tell my story in the investigation process, and how I had to start that all over, once I got out. And, I filed for my disability claim to claim PTSD. And I think it kind of paints the picture that I have like this nasty taste in my mouth, from the military, or the Navy rather. And it's not the case at all. Like that, so that definitely is the low. The low part, was me feeling like, the Navy didn't really have my back, I guess. And not my chain of command, the Navy. And the way that the UCMJ is written, and how my perpetrator was protected, and things like that. But the highs, I would definitely say the work ethic. I developed my work ethic in the Navy. I broke all kinds of barriers. I was a female engineer. I had men that I had learned to respect and admire. I got to learn really quickly in the military that, what I had learned about men before I joined the military wasn't true. That, they weren't all predators. You know what I mean? Right. I was definitely taken in, and I actually still keep in contact with quite a few of the men that mentored me, and I had a lot of positive influences as well. So I would say definitely my work ethic is probably one of my favorite highs, because it's still with me to this day. And then the camaraderie, for sure, the camaraderie.
Absolutely. I still have friends to the same thing. Still have friends that I still keep in contact with, and I'm so thankful that you told your story, because I'd seen your article in the Voyager, and when I saw your story, I was like, there's so many women that are out there, and men and women that have dealt with the same things that you've dealt with, and it's something that needs to be addressed and talked about more. And so that I appreciate. And I love the fact that, you didn't let, just because there were some bad people, like that your misconceptions were changed. That you thought, all men were, bad. But it's like, no, I do have some men that are there to take care of me, to make sure.
Right. So. Absolutely. People ask me too, whenever it's so funny, because people always say, if you had a daughter and she wanted to join the Navy, would you discourage her from joining the Navy? Absolutely not. I wouldn't. I would not. I would not discourage my daughter from joining the Navy for that reason. You know what I mean? Does it happen more often than we'd like? Absolutely. Does it happen to everybody? No. You know? And so, I don't want to paint this picture, because that happened to me, that the Navy's bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you did your 11 years. You got out. Tell me about, how did you get started with, Covert Beauty?
So Culver Beauty is definitely a God idea, because I cannot take credit for how Culver Beauty started. It came to me in the form of a dream at first. And at first, when I first thought that, okay, when God told me to do Covert Beauty, when he told me to launch Covert Beauty, I was under the impression that it was going to be a covert operation. So nobody would know who I was. I actually launched my company with an alias. I called myself G.I. Payne. I was not anticipating being the face of my brand. Everybody that was going to be involved, I was, going to pretty much encourage them to, create their own alias. and it was all about protecting the identity of the person.
Right.
And like you said, when I put my story out there, there was a lot of response to it, right? But there was still that warmth that was missing, if that makes any sense. Like, people were coming forward and saying, hey, yeah, this happened to me. Thank you for what you're doing. But it was very difficult for people to relate because there was no face to the brand. You know what I mean? There was no face. There was nobody to relate to. It was literally just the topic. And it was like maybe 8 months after that where God was like, that's not enough. And that's when I realized that the covert part of Covert Beauty wasn't in the identity. The covert part is the unknown. I think that especially since, the beauty industry can be so superficial. It's vicious. It's unforgiving. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bully. It really could be. And I think that there's this perception that when you see a woman with her face done up and, she's dressed well and she's a certain size and she doesn't have any pimples on her face, that means that her life is together and she's never been through anything. She doesn't have any problems and she's happy. And no, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, that is completely unrealistic. So when I came out with my story, I mean, the response was overwhelming. A lot of people couldn't believe that something like this happened to me because of, my reputation in the military and what I have went through. My investigation, everything was just a very private. And because, unfortunately, I had been in a situation where I was being sexually abused by one of my guardians, I had been conditioned to see my perpetrator every day and not, quote unquote, act like a victim. I didn't draw any attention to myself. I still fulfilled all of my duties and responsibilities. And even in my managerial position, I did not allow what my personal issue was to interfere with my work ethic. And so people thought that, nothing was wrong. So when I came out with my story, it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe of all people this happened to you. And it's like, it happens to a lot of people, and just because you think you see, this perfect life that you may think I have on social media doesn't mean that I haven't been through things and I haven't overcome things. And I think that somewhat gave, people hope. And it made people, go back to the VA and say, actually, I did not put on there that I was a victim of military sexual trauma when I did my disability claim. And I want to report that, or what, I'm going to, talk to my LPO tomorrow. And I'm going to let him know what my work center suit did to me. You know what I mean? So it was just like, it changed from just being the subject, and it started becoming more of a movement.
Yes, definitely.
It started becoming more of a movement.
I love it. Like I said, I went through and looked at your website and everything, and I love everything about what you stand for. And I applaud you because there needs to be more people to realize that, because, just because you're not showing it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And that, we're not all, it's not all perfect, but, we don't sit here and shrink in what's happened to us. So that I appreciate. So, I know you see you have your Covert Beauty, and I also see you got your podcast. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So the podcast is the platform, right? So all of my products, with the exception of my LED compact mirror and the eyelash adhesive, they are all inspired by stories of adversity, right? Of overcoming adversity. And so when it comes to the podcast, it's really about hearing the story from the mouth of the person that experienced it. And I think that there are a lot of people that are talking about these subjects. Like the first eyelash that I dropped is my story, where I'm talking about how I overcame military sexual assault and what I went through in order to, get myself to the point where I could be in a healthy marriage, which I am now, thank God. And the second eyelash was inspired by the story of a teenager who was diagnosed with depression and anxiety at a very young age. And she talks about how she overcame both and how she manages them with psychotherapy and natural supplements. She's never had any psychotropic medications. She's managed them, by natural means and mining her mind, right? And I didn't realize that a lot of people wanted to hear more about that. So I thought that was pretty cool. But essentially, with all of these things being discussed out in the atmosphere, I think that there's a lot of negligence when it comes to the healing process. I think that people will talk about, hey, I was raped when I was in the Navy and I'm just fine. And we kind of leave out the part where it's like, okay, but what did you do specifically to be fine, right? Because I've been trying to be okay, and everything that I'm doing isn't working. And so that's what the podcast is for. The podcast, we have men on there also. We have a couple male guests on there. One of them, which is my favorite, he calls himself Mr. Relentless. He was homeless for 8 years, and he talks about how he overcame that, and now he's an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur. And he talked about, pride and how his pride got in the way, insecurity. He talks about depression. He talks about all of these things and what he had to go through, in order to get himself out of this hole that he was digging for himself. And so that's what the podcast is for. The podcast is to talk about, yes, this happened to me. However, this is what I did, and this is what helped me overcome what it was. And you know what? I've been feeling better ever since I started doing this. That's what it's about. We also have a partnership with a company called Aunt Bertha. Shout out to Aunt Bertha. They're amazing. Okay. And they're pretty much like a social service Google, right? So when we talk on our podcast and we're talking about homelessness, we're talking about domestic violence, you know what I mean? We're talking about sexual assault. These are really tough topics, right? Because almost everybody, unfortunately, knows somebody that's homeless. They know somebody who's a victim or an aggressor of domestic violence and they need help. Or they know somebody who's been sexually assaulted, or they themselves have experienced these things. And so we always encourage we use the platform to direct people to our website, to go to our Aunt Bertha search engine. And they type in their zip code, and it brings up all of these social services that are at low or reduced cost, rather, or they're free. So there's food pantries out there. There's homeless shelters. All of these things that are available in your neighborhood, depending on what your zip code is.
That's awesome.
Same thing with mental health counseling. You know what I mean? Employment readiness, like mock interviews, getting assistance in writing your resume. All of these social services that are out there, we're using our platform on the podcast to direct people to that as well, so that they can go ahead and get a jump start on their healing process.
Right. Oh my goodness. See, and that's awesome. And I love the fact that you mentioned, people think, oh yeah, you overcome this, but what did you do? People don't talk about what exactly was it that helped you. I love the fact that you talked about, cognitive processing. That's something for me. I deal with depression. I've been dealing with depression for a long time. And I'm seeing someone, a therapist, and we're dealing with cognitive behavior therapy. So just dealing with the cognitive part, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't know about. And the fact that you're letting people know, hey, it's out here. Like, there's stuff, there's so much out there, learn, like, look into it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is just, like I said, this is something that I really wanted to get out because there are people, like I said, there are people that have dealt with sexual trauma. They're dealing with depression. And you're talking about these things. And so again, I'm just, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to help people. I also see that you're a licensed social worker.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell us a little bit about that, what you deal with that.
So I'm a licensed master social worker for the state of Texas. And so pretty much what that means is I work as a I am a social worker, and I specialize in working with crisis intervention, and people who are suffering with complications of mental illness, right? So I work with a lot of people who suffer from depression and anxiety and other personality disorders or mental health disorders. And when you are a wounded healer yourself, like myself, right? I live with PTSD, and I do my maintenance to make sure that I'm healthy enough to help other people.
Right.
It can be very, how do you say, if you neglect your own mental health, it can be detrimental to the mental health of other people. And my thing was, and I like to say this to a lot of veterans, my thing was I was so caught up in what happened to me in the military that I neglected to acknowledge how my, like what I brought into the military. Like I said, I was a victim of child molestation, and then I joined the military, and I promised myself that nothing like this would ever happen to me again. And I'm 25 years old, and I'm sexually assaulted again in the military. And so much of my healing process was stuck on that I didn't really pay attention to the fact that I probably already had PTSD, and it had just been aggravated in the military, right? And so whenever, because I work with veterans as well, and when I talk to veterans, especially when we're trying to dig into their mental health and what their triggers are, and we're exploring those a little more, we have to make sure that we stay open to the fact that there may have been some things in the background that, or something that we had, brought with us to boot camp, right? And we just put that in our seed bag with us, So just making sure that we're being open and honest with ourselves. And I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to being a licensed master social worker, is just helping people, supporting them through their process, and getting to know what their personality disorder or their mental health disorder looks like with them, right? Because you just said that you struggle with depression, right?
I do.
I could say I struggle with depression too, and it would look completely different in us. What depression looks like in Sabella is going to look completely different than what depression would look like in Misha.
Right.
So it is literally devoting or committing myself to take the time to help people understand what their diagnosis looks like in their life, and we come up with a plan of action together, and I support them through the process.
I love that. I'm just you like I'm trying not to.
You make me feel like a rock star.
And this is just so I appreciate that, you are there to help other veterans, and realizing too, we already bring that baggage, and sometimes we don't even realize it. It's like, wait a minute. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I noticed for me, that a lot of the times people who do become, in the social worker psychology, there are people that have dealt with stuff like that before too. So it's like I'm helping you, but I'm helping myself as well to figure out what exactly.
Wounded healers.
Exactly. I love that. # wounded healers.
Yeah.
Oh, me. So before we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you, ways they can find you, and also you were talking about the Aunt Bertha, ways to find that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So if you guys are interested in getting to know me a little bit more, I can be found on Instagram at Sabella Symphony with an _ following that. My company, Covert Beauty, you can find us on Instagram at Covert Beauties. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. And the podcast is available on Spotify and YouTube only for right now. It's called It's Time to Uncovert, and both of the handles for Spotify and YouTube are the Covert Beauty names. So they're fairly easy to find. If you are interested in checking out our product and our mission, you can visit our website, www.culvertbeauties.com. And if you go to the Contact Us page and scroll all the way down, you'll see a custom search engine from our official partner, Aunt Bertha. Please feel free to type in your zip code or the zip code of someone who you think may need help, and you just want to send them, the address or phone number to a company or organization that specializes in their area of need. Feel free to do that. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And please, please, please make sure you click on the shop page as well and check out our products. There's all kinds of awesome stuff that we have going on. We have a care package bundle right now available. And we just launched 2 eyeshadow palettes. The first eyeshadow palette is called Sisters in Arms, and it's more of like a orangish kind of warm color palette. It's a great year-round palette, wonderful for fall makeup. It is actually 15 colors, and every color is named after the first name of a woman who has overcome military sexual trauma and is pushing for legislative change in how the UCMJ recognizes and defines sexual assault. Okay? Ooh. So it is an awesome, awesome, awesome cause. For every 100 eyeshadow palettes that we sell, we donate 10% of the proceeds to RAIN, and it's a nonprofit organization. RAIN is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. It is the biggest organization, nonprofit organization in the country that spills into mental health and sexual assault recovery resources in the nation. So we donate to them on behalf of the young ladies who have participated in this project. And then the other eyeshadow palette that we have is called My Sister's Keeper. It's a green eyeshadow palette. It is amazing, and it's wonderful. Wonderful for spring. It's an awesome year-round palette as well. You're going to need it for Christmas, trust me. And it is named. It also has 15 colors, and the eyeshadow palette is named after, each shade is named after the first name of men who are either currently serving or have served, who are in support of anybody coming forward with their story of military sexual trauma, and also supporting us in pushing for legislative change as well. So check it out. We have 2 eyelashes that are out. It's a lot of really, really cool stuff going on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, check out the website, get familiar with it, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and be on the lookout for what's next. Because of all of the amazing male support that Covert Beauty gets, we will be launching Covert Beauty Men this December, and it's going to be a line of hygiene products. Super, super, super excited about that. You guys will see on the website there is a Covert Beauty Men tab. We're already getting the buzz created with that, and Covert Beauty Men also has a Instagram page, and you can find us on Facebook as well, Covert Beauty Men.
Oh, that is awesome. Again, I want to thank you so much for everything. Again, you guys can know that you can find me on www.themelanatedveteran.com. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to, again, The Melanated Veteran. I'm your host, Miss Mesha, signing off, saying embrace what makes you, you.